Hi, I'm Mrs. Trigg, and I'm going to be doing a Think Aloud today that is linked to learning about unemployment, which is part of our economics class, and we've been learning this the past week. There are 4 types of unemployment: seasonal, structural, frictional, and cyclical. Today I'm going to teach you a strategy of remembering multiple terms by connecting them to something that you already know and are familiar with, so that every time you think of this one thing, that other thing will pop up in your mind and remind you what this term means. So first, seasonal employment is related to someone being unemployed because they lost their job because it's out of season. The work is out of season. Seasons can be anything from construction work increasing during the winter, or could be based on agriculture. So migrant workers are usually hit the hardest by seasonal unemployment, and that has to do with growing fruit, like cherries. Cherry season only runs one certain time of year here in the Central Valley, so after that's over with, they no longer need anyone to work for cherry season. So seasonal unemployment is something that doesn't actually go into the figuring of the unemployment rate for the country, because they don't consider seasonal unemployment as a risk to the economy. How can you remember what seasonal economy is? What it means is because fruit is seasonal. If you can remember that fruit is seasonal, then you'll remember that seasonal unemployment has to do with being unemployed due to a season. Fruit is seasonal, and so is your job. Structural unemployment has to do with new technologies, new methods of doing business, new methods of manufacturing. It could be any of those things. And basically, the workers that they need don't have the skills that are required. So, for instance, we've had an uptick of a demand for certain trades, but a lot of people didn't go into trade work, so there's not a lot of people that do those trades, such as it's really difficult to find a machinist. So machinists get paid a lot of money because there's not very many of them. So when someone is structurally unemployed, it's because they don't have the skills that are in demand. So usually that happens when a technology is changed, when they change from making CDs to having electronic music, like iTunes, things like that. So structural, for you to remember what structural unemployment is, you would think that a business is restructuring. When they restructure, they require new skills and workers with those skills. So structural unemployment has to do with restructuring. And if they're restructuring, some of these might be new technologies, and you don't have the skills because it's new. So structural unemployment has to do with businesses restructuring. Structural unemployment is not actually considered a threat to the economy, because when businesses are restructuring, they're usually developing new technology because it's in demand, because people want to buy that technology or want to buy the things that are created from that technology. So that's actually good for the economy. And it's also not figured into being detrimental for the unemployment rate. Frictional unemployment. What is frictional unemployment? Frictional unemployment means that someone's unemployed because they are in the middle of changing jobs. That could mean that they're changing to a new industry, a new career, or it could even be maybe a parent that was staying home with a child for a while and is now going back into their field. But frictional unemployment is usually an unemployment because it's by choice. Someone's changing jobs. So how can you remember frictional employment? is friction. What is friction? Friction is movement, right? If you think of friction as being movement, then you can think about someone moving into a different position, and that's frictional unemployment. So friction equals movement. When someone moves into new employment or a new job. Friction equals movement. Frictional unemployment is also not considered detrimental to the economy because, like I said, this is by choice. Someone could be bettering themselves by changing jobs and going into a new field, like teaching. What is cyclical employment? What does that word even mean? What is cyclical? Cyclical is a fancy word for something that works in cycles. Start here, goes around into a cycle. So you can think of a circle. Cycle, circle. But what is cyclical unemployment? Cyclical unemployment results from, is just supposed to be as part of the natural business cycle. We've talked about business cycles. If you're this far in economics, you understand what the business cycle is. And in business cycles, we know, as with the economy, we have booms and we have busts. Booms, busts, booms, busts, up, down, up, down, up, down. And so with cyclical unemployment, you have likely been laid off as a result of a bust. So businesses create cyclical unemployment when they lay people off. And since it's as a result of a business cycle, we think of it as a cycle or a circle, which is the business cycle. And if it's business related, it's bad. Cyclical unemployment is detrimental to the economy because if you are laying people off, it's likely that there's no demand for your products or your services. So people don't have money to buy your products or services because the economy is bad. And so people get laid off in cyclical unemployment. So we have seasonal, structural, frictional, and cyclical. These three are not considered detrimental. This one is. Cyclical equals cycle, business, bad. And those are ways for you to remember what each one of these means. Seasonal, fruit is seasonal. Structural equals restructuring. Frictional equals movement, equals moving into a new job. And cyclical is a result of the business cycle, the circle of life for the business. And that's by Think Aloud. The end.